Hey guys, thank you very much for your messages and concern for my welfare. I've been living with what most people would consider depression, but I've since learned it's not. It's heartbreak. I didn't have schizophrenia, bipolar, Asperger's, or depression. So all those years of taking hardcore antipsychotics and antidepressants were simply a waste of time. They had no effect except to make me feel like a zombie, etc. I've been locked away many times by police, put in handcuffs and put on suicide watch in mental institutions to try to avoid my expected suicide. Yesterday, I went to the kitchen, my mother was staying, and I pulled out a knife and I said, "Get the fuck out of my house." She didn't leave, so I packed all my stuff and went on the run again. And I was going to live in my van for an unknown amount of time, just constantly crying to the wind because I don't believe in God anymore. Since I was 25, I stopped because he never responded. So the isolation has been extreme. And so basically what happened is when I was 5 years old, my parents got separated. My sister was screaming and crying. She had blood noses. She was hitting everybody. She was 7, I was 5. And she taught me that I shouldn't be so happy, right? Because it was selfish. My happiness was selfish. So I should stop being happy. Because she said, "Look at how sad Daddy is," right? Because my mum had an affair and we were off touring America with this American that she'd had an affair with, going to Disney World in Orlando and everything. And she knew it was wrong and bad that we were doing this. And I didn't. I was having a great time. But she taught me this is wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. And so when I saw Daddy's sad face, I felt guilty. And I felt happiness is wrong. My sister is right. And she trained me and drilled it into me. Don't ever be happy. Don't ever be happy. Don't ever be happy. The family needs to get back together. It never did, though. And as soon as I had taken her role as the sad one who was angry and doing what she taught me to do, fight, she was done and she moved on with her life and had a really happy life and wrote a book about it as she traveled the world. Me, on the other hand, I spent my life in extreme depression, waiting for some sort of closure, waiting for my father to relate to me. My mother was giving me a lot of comfort, psychologically and emotionally, but they were just band-aids. She was crying with me. She felt guilty about having an affair and breaking up the family. And so for me to be sad and crying, it gave her a teddy bear to cuddle into, me. Obviously, when you're cute and small and crying and screaming, people, it's like, "Yeah, okay, little darling, all right, don't worry, I love you, I don't want you to feel pain." But as I became a teenager, my father was like, "No, not a kid anymore, just fucking shut up." And I didn't. It made me louder and double my efforts. And I was fighting against all the step people, stepmother, stepbrother, stepfather. Couldn't handle them. They weren't part of the family. I'd paused my life. I planted a flag in the ground when I was 5 years old, and I wasn't going anywhere. I was staying in our childhood home, and I was staying in my childhood mentality, and I was expecting everybody to come back. The years just kept ticking by over and over and over again. This was 1983 that it all started. I've been in perpetual pain since then. It's now 2022. And I was waiting. My father, I eventually realized only earlier last year, 2021, that he is never going to give a shit. I mean, this big occasion when we're going to come and reunite and go to a counsellor together and speak about the problems, my perpetual hell, my level 10 pain that I've been levels 7 to 10 in terms of emotional pain that I've experienced every single day of my life since I was 5, is a critical problem for any human. I don't think you've probably even ever met anybody who's experienced that level of pain for 39 years. It's extremely rare. I've never met anyone who's experienced pain for this long, ever, except for me. Now, it was self-harm originally, but the neural pathways in my 5-year-old brain solidified and became the strong default pathways that all thoughts had to go through to get to anything. So it was perpetual pain forever. And I've been living like that, and I still am right now. So my father had never given a shit, and it was summarized basically as we all have our problems. When we were meeting with the counsellor, I was saying, I've lived with perpetual pain, I've been living in hell, I've been waiting for you to care. I do care, son, I've tried my hardest, right? He didn't give a shit. He's been off partying and stuff while I was under a bridge screaming and crying into the rain with fucking mosquitoes all over me, and I was homeless and everything. So he didn't really care. He's just a liar, right? And he'll be there for the good times. He wants happy things, not sad things, as he says. So yeah, that I walked out and I just told him, I'll see you in court, thinking that maybe one day I will sue him for emotional neglect, for, you know, child abuse. I don't know if I ever will. It would be a small consolation at this point. I'd want to see him in jail for at least 10 years. Otherwise, you know, all my other thoughts in my mind while I'm suffering at this level are, of course, about torturing him and, you know, keeping him alive, you know, which is worse than it sounds, keeping him alive. The other thing is my mum, yeah, I thought she was comforting me all these years with an aim to convince him, like she would be doing background work. She's the only person who ever listened to my story as I cried to Mummy when she tucked me in when I was a kid and laid down with me, and I would cry into her shoulder and she would give me hugs and everything else. And I just thought she was always going to be there for me. And then when I became a teenager and my pain had not stopped, she started playing devil's advocate. And I thought, okay, this is not good. You've got to stop doing this. She was siding with the people who'd hurt me and saying, you've got to learn to see their perspective. So I can see their perspective. It's greed, it's selfish. They can't be bothered putting themselves in my shoes. So we're at an impasse because I can clearly see where these assholes are coming from, but I don't need you to side with them. And so that caused massive fights and problems that has gone on ever since with her. And I was waiting for her to snap out of it. And as I was getting more and more, you know, taken away in handcuffs by police and so on, off the edge of cliffs and stuff, I just became more and more aggressive towards her. Called her a cunt, which is a terrible word she hates. Because I think she had an abusive father. Her father was not abusive to her, but her mum was pummeled, my grandma, by him. And he used that word, so for me to use that word it's a nightmare for her. But given the perpetual pain I'm in and the lack of action she's taken to stop my pain from happening, my father used to say, if it is to be, it is up to me. It's a saying I'm supposed to embed into my own brain so I actually take action. But it's like telling a tiger in a cage to just, you know, get yourself out of the fucking zoo while you're holding the freaking key to the cage door. I can't, you know, the person who's down, who's weak, who's paralyzed from the suffering is not the one who's able to get themselves out of the problem. They're in a ditch, they can't dig up. Somebody throws you a shovel when you're in a ditch, there you go, get out. You could die, dig up that way, I guess. Make yourself a ramp. But I didn't want to have to build the freaking ramp, alright? I was self-harming to get the attention so they would take action and care. A lot of it was to do with the neural pathways being developed in that way, but every day I would squeeze hard and cause myself to have excruciating amounts of pain, thinking that they're able to see and hear my thoughts. It initially started because I had, when I was a child, imaginary friends, because apparently children are technically mentally damaged, you know, in comparison to an adult at that scale. I was told this yesterday. It's a funny way to think of children. Mentally, they are mentally deficient, but that's more to do with their lack of knowledge rather than the problems of the processes. But the brain still isn't completely formed, and they are relying on grown-ups to look after them, to be honest, okay? As you'd expect any baby animal, from an egg up to a tiny little toddler or whatever, don't expect any fledgling animal to look after itself. They have to be protected. And I wasn't. I was neglected. I mean, I was comforted by my mum and so on, but I was given shelter and food and schooling and everything. But as far as my father's commitment to my feelings, putting himself in my shoes and seeing things from my perspective, understanding so that he could therefore care, he wasn't even curious about what I was thinking and feeling. He was just thinking, what's his behavior like today? What does he look like today? And that's how he evaluated me as a son, which is disgusting. If you're going to have a kid and you don't care about how they feel and think, then fuck you. Not just fuck you. There should be massive prison sentences for such activity. You have to put yourself in your children's shoes. There's no way around it. And I expect that I will have to do the same. Even if I don't feel like it, I'll be obliged to do it. It's the role as a parent, whether you like it or not. Bad luck. You have to care. You have to understand in order to care first. If you haven't got to the point of understanding, then you say you care, or you do care, you don't. You're lying. If you don't understand, how can you care? You don't know what you're caring about. Why are they angry? What is this sadness inside them that forces out loud words and violence from their bodies, and you can see the pain in them? What's causing that? What's triggering that? What seed of pain is inside their brain? What coordinates are they at? You have to get into that darkness with them and take them out. Go in there with a harness so that when you go out, you can take them with you and do it softly, gently, as if they're injured. Okay? However injured they are, the gentler you have to be. Now, I might sound like I'm saying all this from a very selfish perspective because I'm the one who's injured and in pain and I need rescuing, and I do. Because I've been down here in this fucking hole for 39 years so far. Anyway, I've got to see my mum today because she's going to my cousin's wedding. My cousin's getting married today at 4 o'clock. She'll be there. We were supposed to go in the same car with my auntie and so on, but I'll just drive myself. So I have come home, and yeah. In regards to hair loss, all my hair grew back, so that's good. I just squeezed really hard, and if you know what Vita Wheat is, it's a type of biscuit in Australia, and if you put a layer of butter and Vegemite on there, and you squeeze the two levels together, it oodles out like little worms. And that's what I did. And then the hairs just squeezed that back out of the holes where they were missing. So I'm back to a full head of hair again. So that's lucky. One less thing to worry about. Yeah, I started losing my hair in my mid to late 20s, I suppose. Didn't really know if it was just the way I was brushing it, or maybe I was pulling some out. Maybe the gel was too much that I was putting in my hair, and when I was brushing it was tugging hairs out. Might have had something to do with it. But then again, my dad's bald. My grandfather had 2 recessions like that. So he was fairly bald, but not completely. He still had a tuft. When he died at the age of about 90, I think he was 97, and his mum died at 99. Although we looked at her records, she was actually 102 when she died. She was born in 1902. Actually, she wasn't. She was born in 1899 or something. She would have met people who had been born in the 1700s. Unless she wouldn't. There weren't many 100-year-olds in the 1899. And she was too young at that point. Anyway. Think about the oldest person you ever met. Like when you were a kid, when you were about, like, just say you got a good memory of somebody. When you were 5, you'd have good memories of people's faces just before you might have gone to their funeral or something, because they were mega old. They could have been in their 90s or something. Think about what year that they were born and think about the stuff they saw. It's very interesting. Anyway, maybe that's just an interest of mine, but putting yourself in the perspective of the universe as we see it thus far, etc. We only get a small pocket of sliding scale. If you're here, you can only see back that far and forward this far a little bit. You don't get a proper perspective. I mean, there could have been multiple civilizations that were intergalactic and so on, and they've died out. We wouldn't even see a trace. The pyramids would barely exist that far into the future. So anything that was mega structured amazingness could be gone or invisible to us or something else. It's just, but even locally, it's interesting to remember back in your own life what you were like 10, 15, 20 years ago or whatever, and going forward into the future what things will be like. But then go to a cemetery once in a while and read the tombstones and the years people died. It's just interesting to be surrounded by, to have a perspective of I'm temporary and here are the people who came before and the people who come after and the animals, but the animals just only live to 6, 7 years old in a lot of cases. And you think of a dog, you look into a dog's eyes and you think, this dog is wise. No, he's not, he's only 14 maximum. He never gets to be wise. So we're, anthropomorphizing the animal, but misinterpreting what eyes are, which are just like retinas with bauble lenses over the front of them. They're not windows to the soul. Though they look like it, don't they? Like if I look off into the distance like this, I'm saying goodbye to a loved one for the last time. You know what I'm thinking about right now? A shopping list. Milk, bread. Maybe some M&Ms. See, it's not a window. I'm just lying to you. The truth is in the knowing, but you don't know what somebody else is thinking, right? Unless they're screaming, and there's no way that Will Smith would have faked the slap just so he could sell some Pfizer products and get a handout. And, Chris Rock got a few extra bucks from it or whatever. I don't know. Because he was crying a lot and saying, keep my wife's name out your beeping mouth, right? Twice. Now that's over the top. I'm getting banned from the academy. It seemed real. Anyway, big deal. Also, Happy New Year for back in whatever month the New Year starts. And war in Ukraine. What else happened? COVID seems to have eased off. People are opening borders. International flights are resuming in a lot of places. So, welcome back. And, I'm not going to stab anybody at the wedding. Don't worry. It's early in the morning right now, so got a few hours before I got to get there. I have put on a lot of weight, and I haven't been doing anything. I've been sitting and playing computer games all day long, crying. So with the whole issue with my mum, she made it clear to me that she had no plan. She was going to let me suffer for the rest of my life, and she was never going to try to find or give me closure in any way whatsoever. So with that realization and that with that announcement almost, confession, along with the fact over the last couple of days when she was staying with me, I realized she would just lie or weasel her way out of any conflict situation at all costs, even if it meant she was just outright lying to me, even though I was there for the time where I could verify that what she's saying as an untruth was actually completely different to how she describes it, which means she's absolutely lying. And as I go to tell her, no, I was there, you're just making shit up. And then she would change the subject by shouting at me or something, and no, you're just not listening, or some other thing, right? So it's just weaseling out, then shouting, and then just distractions over here and there and then whatever. It's all she's ever given me in terms of comfort. The whole thing I wanted to get done, the closure that I needed from my family, she had no intention of providing it. And I've been waiting for it. I've been just waiting. And she was never going to give it to me. She was just going to distract me until she died of old age, or I died of suicide. There was no planning or intent of giving me what I needed at all. So you be careful of that when people are comforting you. Make sure it's genuine and they're trying to reach an end conclusion for you and help you with that. And you do the same if you're trying to help somebody else, because distractions and their pats on the back are pretty fucking useless, aren't they? At least she made me feel less alone during those times. But if I had felt more alone, I would have been driven to either suicide or action, rather than her nullifying there and easing my efforts, taking my efforts down and pulling me down from actually making a change in my life. So she prevented any kind of moving on ever, which is why I guess I was perpetually waiting. Not her fault completely, mine, because I was self-harming, and I still do, thinking at first that God is listening to me, you know, as I go and pick up litter off the side of the road. Oh, somebody shouldn't have left that there, I'll put this in a bin. Or helping somebody, anybody, making sure that I sacrifice myself for some guy who's already got lots of chicks, at a party if a girl's smiling at me, right? And I'll be like, oh well, he is interested in her as well. I'll just step aside and let him go. And then I'd spend the night of whatever party it was at, comforting somebody, and really genuinely caring. I know the dark places of the world. This is awful. I'm sorry you're here, but you've got me. I'm here as companionship for you at this time. So that's what I would do at parties. Somebody crying, I'd be just there the whole time, making sure they were okay. And I'd look at all the people who had lots of friends, all the people who were selfish, filled with happiness. They had everything because they just took it. Maybe their parents trained them to, and I don't know, just stepping over a homeless person without saying, you okay? Do you need any money or anything? I couldn't understand those people. But then I realized they're everywhere. So what are you going to do? You can lower your expectations of the world because it's shit. I don't want to, though. I want the world to matter. I want the world to mean something. And all this waiting for closure from my family, now that I can sort of see it's never going to happen, logically I can. But they're all still alive, and so I still live in false hope. I hate false hope. I don't really have the energy to make something of myself anymore. Opportunities have been lost, lots of them. Whatever I expected to do in my 20s, it didn't happen. It's too late. 30s, just write off. Nothing happened in my 30s. I'm sure that's offensive to the people I met in my 30s, but in general, nothing fucking happened. Now 40s is halfway through now. I'm heading to 50. Is anything going to happen? If it is to be, it is up to me. I have to unparalyze myself like fucking Kill Bill with the toes after the Vaseline. I have to unparalyze myself. But thank you all for your concern. I will try to think of something that I can do to help you squeeze those follicles back out if you've lost them. But just take it from me, just squeeze really hard. Make sure your eyes should actually hurt from squeezing your eyes so hard, and you should feel the little hair follicles just pushing their way back up through the surface, like grass. If you've ever planted grass seeds in soil, Yeah, it should look like that, but with hair coming through scalp.